one of the things I realized as I was using this program was that I was doing this, but not starting rolling or starting filming. And then I was like, we ended up talking about some stuff that I'm like, fuck, I wish we would have been recording that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could ruin relationships over it because it's making a piece of art plus a business because you have to sell it at the end of the day.
Somehow that game ended up having like 300,000 downloads.
EA, Activision, Ubisoft, all these big names started cannibalizing all these little studios.
And I have a little bit of a fear that we're going to lose other engines. They're going to throw that all out the window and just switch to Unreal. Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, right on, man. How's development going?
Development's going pretty good. I mean, we're gearing up for the early access release in 2 months, pretty much. 17th of June is supposed to be our early access release date.
Nice.
We wanted to really get the demo out at the end of this month. Unfortunately, we're still ironing out a few more small things. I mean, the demo like on Steam officially, but it should be out like in the next week, I think. Just got to finish a few more things, but overall it's going pretty good. I got some new people on board as well, helping out with the programming. So yeah.
Nice. I'll be honest, I can't wait to play it because I love min-maxing. I love tinkering. One of my all-time favorite games, and I'm like I'm talking OG, like I'm an Armored Core like fanatic. Like OG Masters of Arena, like that was like my jam. And so like obviously when 6 came out, I was like, yo, this game is like one of the greatest games ever. I got every single achievement in it on Steam. Like I played the living hell out of it. And so like I get the same kind of feeling when I see your game. I'm like, oh my God, I get to put the weapons on there. I'm like, I get to min-max this sucker down to and so it's like just my like mechanical brain. I just love that aspect of it. And I mean, it's a sweet game. So like when you're going from point A to point B, and it's like each point A to point B is progressively more difficult as you get to those different levels, huh?
Exactly. I mean, both in terms of like the levels are longer, so you need to get, stay focused for a longer period of time and just micromanaging a lot of things.
Yeah.
And the enemy waves are getting stronger and stronger, more enemy variety and so on. So there's just more things you have to manage. Plus, at the same time, because your train is getting larger with more mechanics and so on, there's just more cooldowns you have to think about, more things to repair, more this, more that. So like the complexity is always expanding at all times. So yeah.
It's rad, man. Like I said, like when I first saw your game, I'm like, God, I hope this guy actually agrees to do my show. I was like, because I was one of those. I was like I said, the first thing that I saw when I was trolling Reddit and messaging 1,000 people, you being one of them.
Yeah.
I saw your post where you had blocks. It was like literally just like like 2D blocks. You're like before and then now, and I was like, oh, that's rad. Like also a great piece of marketing too. Like that was brilliant.
I was just searching through my files and like, oh wow, look at this video that I have of our game like 1 trillion years ago. And then I was like, maybe I can find some build. And then thankfully I already had like source control set up like super early in the project. And I just scrolled to like the first, pretty much, the first branches that we had and like the first merges. And I was like, oh, let's just see how the game looks then. I get the build and I'm like, wow, this is very, very different.
Are you using Source Tree?
Yeah, Source Tree, yeah.
Oh man. I almost deleted our entire game using Source Tree. Luckily I made a backup because I live in the Midwest right now, and we get tornadoes, and so like that night we had some really crazy weather. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta back up my whole computer. I'm like, I just had a feeling like I was like, I better do this. But then like that night as well, I also pushed my changes, but I pushed it onto the wrong branch, and it ended up one of our main developers ended up pulling it down, which I don't know what happened, but it deleted like half the game, and it was just like, oh no, and then we were like freaking out. I'm like, oh God, did I seriously just delete the whole game? And then I was like, oh my God, I just made a backup. I was like, I got it, we're good, and pulled it in. Well, but yeah, Source now, I don't even touch Source Tree for the most part, like because it just scared the crap out of me. So I have my own independent file, and I just package everything up and send it over to them. I'm like, here, you put it in the game.
Yeah, it's funny how like source control, when I started, learning game development and so on, it was always like, oh, this very scary thing, oh no, I can fuck up my whole project, I can just lose all of my progress, blah, 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 blah. And then I started working professionally in game dev and so on. And even professionally, when you're working with people, it's still this intimidating thing. It's like, Oh
It's
wow.
jarring.
It's
You're
like,
just kind of like,
oh yeah. Things can go wrong, and I've had like, even while working at Ubisoft and so on, it's like, oh, somebody just messages me like, hey, by the way, I pushed something and you just lost all of your work from 2 days ago. I'm like,
oh,
what?
jeez. That's why I said,
No.
yeah, that's why I said like now it's like I have obviously my local file, and what I'll end up doing is I'll just pull like, because we have a main coder who codes like who does all the coding pretty much. I do some of the coding, like some of the coding. I do stuff that like mainly is like when it comes to like UI and visual effects and things like that. He does all the main heavy lifting, but I'm like, it's easiest if I just work off of my own file. I'll package it up and then you just put it into the main file. I'm like, I don't even want to mess with source tree anymore unless it's something simple that I know that I'm like, if I push this, it's going to be fine. But generally I'm like, I don't want to mess with it. I almost deleted our whole freaking game.
No, I think now, at least for us on Apocalypse Express, we've gotten a pretty good flow of things like working with branches, just communicate, especially like because Unity, when you're working with Unity, you got to be careful because like it doesn't know how to read prefabs and scene changes and stuff like that. So
Right.
like with code, it's fine. Like if you and me, work on the same piece of code and there's a conflict, that's really easy to sort because it's just like, okay, I'll take, from line 100 to 120 and take this from that line and that's fine. But then if we both edit a prefab, that's it, right? That prefab is just corrupted and you're done. So it's always like our Discord, we literally have like a chat where it's just, oh, is somebody editing a scene? Is somebody editing prefabs? Just, communicating about these things. And yeah. That's why like programs like Perforce and using that sort of source control is good because there you can lock the files. Like the moment you start editing something, it locks the file and then nobody else can edit it. Like if you try to edit it, it's just going to say this is locked by another person. That's it.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I didn't even think about that actually. That's smart.
Yeah. But I don't think there's a free version of that. So it's like, for us, it was just like, okay, Git, source tree, it's free. We can just use it. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, when you're indie, you're just looking to not spend money. You can. I mean,
and how many people do you guys have working on it right now?
So pretty much we have like a core team of 3 people, and that's pretty much the people that are working on the game for the longest. It's me, an artist, and a programmer. But then we also have now 2 additional programmers that are working pretty much like around 20 hours a week on the project. So they're now really helping a lot with contributing and getting things done. And then we also have some intern programmers, like 2 of them who just contribute when they can and so on. And it's useful for them to be working in a team, developing a game and so on. And then we also have 2 guys working on sound and music. They're also like sort of supporting, right? They're constantly there, but they're not there like every week, working X amount of hours or so on. It's we request like, hey, we need these and these sounds, they deliver, or we need this soundtrack or this song for this level or whatever, and then they deliver. And we have a guy working in marketing. So that's 1, 3, wow. Like around less than 10, but yeah, it's become a larger team. But at the same time, like around 5 is the team that is constantly developing the game. Yeah.
That kind of seems like how it is. Yeah, we have a core 5 basically. Each one of us has our own little bit of a designated role, or at least our professions. Yeah. One of the things we found out that we realized we're like, we don't have anybody to do sound. And that was one of the things we've been like working on this thing, and like just, obviously we've been playing it, and you don't realize it because you're sitting there, you're still working on it and you're not really thinking about it, and then all of a sudden you get to this crossroad or this point and you go, holy shit, we don't have any sound in this game. Not like, obviously we have fillers and stuff like that, nonsense, but I mean, we didn't have any like dedicated somebody designed sound for our game, and we just like, holy crap, we didn't even think about, and now we're like kind of not really scrambling, but we have somebody who did all the music. We have all like original music in our game, and I wouldn't say he's a sound designer by trade by any means, but he's done like music and stuff like that. He's like, oh, I'll give it a crack. So he's kind of starting to try and make up his own stuff, but a lot of their stuff is kind of campy and silly. So like I started, my daughter was making this really weird noise. She's like, at the time she was like 6 months, and she was making this really weird noise. She kept I don't even know if I can find it, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. But she was making this weird noise, and she was in the background when I was on a meeting with my my other devs, and they're like, what is that noise? I'm like, oh, it's my daughter. She does this weird thing. I don't know what's going on with her. And they're like, dude, that's a great voice line or voiceover for Kevin, which is one of our characters. Yeah. And like, dude, just record her, just do it. And so like, that's kind of been how some of this stuff has come up. And so she did the. I'll have to send it to you or whatever. It's such a weird noise she kept doing, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell she's doing. She keeps doing this, but now it's kind of been like that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's similar to a story that we have because, like, on Discord, we have a soundboard where we have a bunch of sounds, funny sounds, and so on, and we put some sounds from like Warcraft, like the orcs saying "work, work," blah blah blah, stuff like that. And some of the guys on the team like to imitate those sounds, and they just say the things, and the sound designer's just like, man, that sounds really good. Wait, maybe we can record this, and you can be the guys, you can be the orcs in the game. And then suddenly we have like a bunch of recordings of now like people sending like, and we still haven't added those sounds in. Like they're just waiting for it to be added, but we now plan on just adding them in. Like when the hog riders ride in on the screen, they can sometimes like play one of those sounds, just add a little bit more flavor. Funny. So yeah.
Those are the more fun things that you just like, the unexpected things that you're like, oh, cool. Yeah, let's just do this.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, but I think the sad thing, like, I mean, not the sad thing, but there's so many ideas always flowing, and then it's always choosing what you can do, right? Like a few days ago, the artist just said, imagine if we had a guy, instead of like riding next to the train, he's like this super buffed guy who's just running next to the train. And I'm like, that sounds really good, but it needs to be created, it needs to be animated, it's a new enemy, blah blah blah. Do we have time for it? No.
That's the hardest part. I mean, me and my other devs and stuff like that, it's hard getting off on a tangent because you're just like, oh my god, wouldn't that be so cool if we did and then because I mean, obviously, like, this is making games is such a creative outlet that your brain just goes absolutely bananas just making up stuff. And me and the other devs were all like actually pretty close friends, and so like, which is funny because I know in one of your answers you're like, don't make games with friends. I'm like, well, that's all we're doing is making games with friends.
Well, but anyway, I mean, I'll elaborate more on that for sure.
Yeah, of course. And so like but we grew up playing like Dungeons and Dragons and stuff like that, so like making characters has always been, or making worlds and characters and things like that is like so second nature to us. It's just like, hey, we're going to play this type of campaign or whatever. I'm like, oh, cool. I have this idea. I want to play this weird eccentric type of character. Yeah. And so that's kind of like how when making our game, we've kind of gone off, like we could go off on tangents. We have like catalogs of just stuff that we want to do with the game, but we're like, stay focused. We need to get the thing out. We cannot keep adding stuff to the game. Yeah.
It's always just cutting down. Like, that's why I've tried not to like overdevelop it and like think about so many features into the future, just because I'm like, I don't want these things to also be a distraction for us where we're, constantly looking at, oh, when are we going to work on this super cool thing in the future? And I'm like, no. I don't even want you thinking about that. We need to focus on the core loop, on the core stuff.
It's so hard though.
It is, but
so hard.
It's
that's
mandatory.
Fun.
Yeah.
So we're here with Matea talking about Apocalypse Express. I saw this game on Reddit and I was instantly attracted to it because I am a nerd when it comes to like min-maxing and items and attaching things to like a big ship or like, for instance, Armored Core in that regard, and just min-maxing yourself into a level and saying, yeah, here we go. So anyway, I'll let Matea take it from there and talk about his game for a minute.
So yeah, hi, I'm Matea. I'm the lead developer on Apocalypse Express, and the game is pretty much a action management roguelike where you are the conductor of a train in a post-apocalyptic world. And the whole idea is that you are a lone conductor. So you're pretty much managing every possible aspect of the train at the same time. So you have to shovel coal, you have to figure out turns, you have to use the cannon to shoot at enemies, you have to pick up resources, use different modules. So the game is very much it's all about micromanagement and figuring out what I need to do first. And a cool thing with the game is that you're pretty much riding this train, which has like a ton of health. It's this huge hunk of steel, and you're constantly getting attacked. Things are burning, things are exploding, but you just keep going. You're fixing things. You got to get to the end. And how I normally describe the game when we talk about like references and so on is if FTL and Overcooked had a baby, but in a Mad Max world. That's like my the blend of games and I guess movies, worlds. So that's my quick pitch on Apocalypse Express, I'd say.
I love that blend, actually. That's such a great blend because now that I think about it, I'm like, oh my God, it totally is.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And like, I mean, every time we post on Reddit or we mention the game anywhere, they're like, oh my God, this looks like FTL. I'm like, it is, but it like gameplay wise, it is very, very different, right? Because FTL is like pausing, very tactical, planning ahead and so on, where in our game, it's all about reaction. Something's happening, I need to react to it in the moment. And if my reaction time is slow, if I take a lot of time to figure out what I'm going to do, things will just go south very fast. So fast decision making.
How long have you guys been like from when you first conceptualized to like now? How long has been that development time so far?
I mean, you could say 3 years, and like maybe 3 years ago I had the idea initially, but I'd say like 2.5 years really where like we've actually started developing it and so on. So yeah, and like the velocity of working on the project has also been shifting a lot. Like we've had moments where we had a lot of progress, then moments where we didn't have as much progress, just because we're all working like part-time when we can on the project. So it's not like every day, every week, putting time into the game. Instead of it's when we have time, we contribute. So
yeah. What was like when you, like 3 years ago when you thought of the game?
Yeah.
What did the early ideas look like when you thought of like, what would be cool if I did XYZ? Yeah, let me see if I can run with that. What did that early vision of it look like?
Well, I mean, maybe I can mention also, like, at the time I was working at Ubisoft, and I just needed an extra, like, creative outlet, somewhere where I can, have my ideas just put into a game. And the fact is, like, I don't really work well just solo. I like working in a team. I think teamwork is amazing, and working with people and so on, both the social aspect of it and the just collaborative aspect of it. And I was like, okay, I want to make a game. I want to make something that's somewhat realistic to do in a not like 10 years span. Something that we can get the core done, and then something that can be expandable. So immediately I said I want to make a roguelike. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? We can release it with not all the content, not all of the upgrades, not all the progression,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. So that was my main idea. I was like, okay, I want to do a roguelike. And then I started exploring the market, seeing what exists, what has been done, and so on and so forth. And I think at that time I just finished like playing Overcooked with my girlfriend, and I was very much in that mindset of like throwing things across the tables, and then hectic, everything's fucked, my fish is burning, I need to chop the cabbage, blah blah blah. And I really liked that idea, and I was like, how can I combine that into a game? Like I didn't want to make just an Overcooked roguelike, whatever. And in general, I mean, I love roguelikes. Like Binding of Isaac is probably one of my favorite games of all time. I think I have over 1,000 hours on that game.
Wow.
I played so much, but I also like enjoy Enter the Gungeon, Nuclear Throne, even like Slay the Spire, stuff like that. So I just tried, gathering references from those games and seeing what's fun. I actually don't have like I don't know how I got exactly to the game. I was like, okay, I need something simple. So, there's not a lot of movement. The train is just there. It's static. The background's moving. That's how the game works. And you're just there and managing some stuff. It's like I tried to come up with a very simple idea. And now that's funny because it's like a simple idea. We've been now developing it for like
always
2.5 years. But at the same time, at its core, and this is something like every time we showcase the game to people, they're like, it's very simple, actually. Like at its core, it's just you're a guy managing some stuff on the train. The complexity comes from the fact that you are overwhelmed with so many different things at the same time. But all in all, it's just you're a guy and you have like 2 buttons you can press: interact and fix. And that's it,
oh, wow.
So, and then of course, like post-apocalyptic slowly came in. I started working with like the artist, joined the team as well. He was already working on some games. So he does pixel art primarily. So he started having some ideas of how the game could look and so on. And very quickly, we already started establishing an art style. It's going to be post-apocalyptic. It's going to start in the desert, this ruined train a little bit and so on. And things just sort of started developing together within the team. We were just constantly discussing, seeing how we're going to, how the ideas are going to expand, how the game is going to look. So it wasn't something that I sat down and I was like, I created this world in my mind and everything that I wanted. It was very much something that evolved as we were developing, for sure.
Yeah. How did you so you just said like you used to work for Ubisoft.
Yeah.
Like what was that experience like, and like how long, when did you start or when did you stop? Like what, kind of give me a little bit of background on that. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so Ubisoft pretty much like, I mean, I can quickly give my background in terms of like game development and how I got into it. Maybe that's a good way to say it. So I pretty much when I was in high school, I already was interested in game development. Like my end of high school, whatever assignment was, I made a small game, and all that. And after high school, I really didn't know what university I want to go to, what I want to study. I was interested in acting. You know, I like movies and so on. I was like, acting sounds cool and so on. It's very hard to get into acting. I mean, anywhere in the world, pretty much. So I tried getting into university for that, but that didn't go well. I pretty much just put that to the side immediately. And I said, okay, I really want to do games. I really want to do games. I'm not sure what in games, but I'm going to start learning programming. I'm going to start learning just how to develop them. And then we'll see where that takes me. And then I was 18 at the time, and I started developing my first game. I started just working with a few friends. We started making a idle clicker game. It's called Biceps Clicker. And we worked on that for a year. And pretty much after a year, we had a game released on Play Store, it was a great experience for me because I managed to go through the whole development process from A to Z, you know, from conception to creating the game to optimizing it to fixing bugs to releasing it, which for me was, I mean, an amazing experience, right? I really understood how to work with people, how to design things, how to fail, and so on and so forth. And somehow that game, that's maybe a story for later, but it ended up having like 300,000 downloads. It was relatively successful and so on. But right after that, Ubisoft Belgrade opened recently, so where I live, Belgrade, and they had a game design position opened. I was like, man, let's do it. Fuck it. You know, I'll apply. And they were asking, you know, for X years of experience, blah, blah, blah. I was like, it doesn't matter. You know, I'll try and who knows, maybe I'll manage. And, you know, 1 test, 2 tests, 3 tests, interviews, this, that, blah, 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 blah. And the whole process lasted like 4 months. It was a very long process. Because I was literally the first designer being hired in the Belgrade studio. Because at the time the studio had like 20-ish people. And lo and behold, they say, hey, you got the job, you know? And I was 19 at the time, and I started pretty much working at Ubisoft as a junior game designer. And I worked there, for 5 years. I worked on the Ghost Recon franchise. I worked on a bunch of unannounced projects. And just learned a lot, got a chance to meet a lot of people, to travel as well to other studios, meet super experienced game developers. And it was just an amazing place. And I think in general, these big AAA studios are just a great place for young developers to learn a lot, to also meet people and so on. Like a lot of people think that it's, you know, it's impossible to get into AAA game development. It's this big thing and blah, 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 blah. I mean, the fact is they're constantly hiring juniors. You know, that these studios have thousands and thousands of people, and they're constantly, you know, more juniors. They're hiring people out of universities, hiring people with experience. And I think one of the key reasons why I also managed to get the job is as well because I had this project behind me. It was a simple, very small project and so on, but they saw that I had experience with developing a game fully, right? And that helped me really, really a lot. And Ubisoft was great, but at the same time, I wanted more challenge. You know, when you're working in such a big company and so on, you're just being tasked with working with like very small pieces of the game. You know, I wouldn't say it's not impactful. I still felt like everything that I did, you know, was impactful. Just change, the designs that I created that ended up in the game, and then you know see people on Reddit commenting about it and so on. So you definitely feel like you're still part of the game, you know. But at the same time, it's quite small, right? You know, if a project has like 500 people working on it, you're still just one of those people. And that slowly started taking a toll on me. I was like, I want more. I want to learn more. I want to expand more. I want my knowledge to broaden. Pretty much after the 5-year mark, I was at the associate lead position. Like in Ubisoft, I had a small team with me. I had like other designers, and that was great. Just being able to also work within a team in terms of, you know, design, being able to collaborate, brainstorm. That was all amazing, but it just still wasn't fulfilling me. And at that point, I just started searching for a new job. And I moved to the place where I'm working now. It's called Abstraction Games. They work as an outsourcing company for like other AAA, AA developers. And I've been here for around 3 years now, and it's really great here just because I get a chance to constantly shift projects, you know, experience a lot of things, work on different aspects and facets of design, which is also amazing. So it's, I think the amount of that I learned in these past 3 years is so much more than the like 5 years that I worked in Ubisoft.
So that actually brings up a question. So you initially I thought you and your team were self-publishing. Are you self-publishing, or is this through?
Yeah. No, this is completely self-published. Yeah, because we started working on this like somewhere around when I was when I was leaving Ubisoft. The Apocalypse Express started like developing. And then, this is something I'm working completely separately from anything. It's just, I needed, I was, I was a Ubisoft and I needed more of a creative outlet. And I just, started having these ideas and so on, started prototyping stuff. And that's how Apocalypse Express pretty much started. And then, just developing that in the background with a small team.
Wow. So, going back to when you got hired at Ubisoft, it's just really interesting, I think, for people to realize that, like, did you have, besides having that project under your belt, did you go and learn and go to college or go to university or anything like that? Or were you just like, I just want to do this on my own and I'm going to learn it, and then you had a portfolio in your background?
Yeah, so I think two things were important there. First thing is that game that I actually developed during that year, I think that was really crucial. But at the same time, I really took it seriously. Like when I found out I wasn't going to go to college, I didn't say, okay, I'm going to take a gap year and just chill for a year and do whatever. I was like, okay, I really want to do this. I really want to get into game development. So I immediately went on Udemy. I took courses for Unreal, Unity,
Nice.
Programming, and I really said to myself, okay, Monday to Friday, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to sit down at 10, I'm going to work till 6. If that's either on my project or learning, programming, learning these courses, I really wanted to, contribute myself to this instead of just, whiffing it. So I really took it seriously, and it really paid off, right? After a year, my knowledge on programming, on game development, on every small aspect of game development was much larger, and it really helped me land that first job in Ubisoft.
That's awesome. Because like a lot of people, they feel like, I have to do A, B, C, D, E, F, G before I can get to where I want to be. And I've told so many people, I'm like, look, just shoot your shot. I'm like, have something and shoot your shot. The worst anybody could ever tell you is no. And at that point, I mean, then at least you can learn from it and say, okay, well, I need to get a little bit better at something, or a little level up a little bit more in this aspect of it to try and get there. But I mean, I personally put myself in so many situations where I had no business being in, but for some reason, now that I'm in that position, I look like some sort of authority in that position. And it's so funny because it's like, there's a really good quote. If you're, I'm going to butcher it and I'm not going to remember it. If you're in a position or something like that you feel qualified for, you're in the wrong position. Like, you should always kind of be in something that you feel a little bit unqualified for, because that's where you grow. You don't grow when you're doing something that you know how to do every single day. When you think about like work, like, it's funny that you made that clicker with like the pumping up and working out, actually, but it's a really good analogy for like when lifters and working out and stuff like that, you don't grow until you fail. And so like when you're working out and lifting, like, the growth happens when you struggle and you hurt and where it's actually difficult. You don't struggle when you're lifting something that's really easy. And so I think that's really cool that most people like don't be held up by being like, I can't do this unless I go to college and get the degree and get the certification and get the this and get the that, get the this. It's like, just start doing it and the rest will fall into place. At the very least, you're going to learn something.
Exactly. And I think people are also afraid when they see these like job offers where it's like, oh, we need 3 years of experience, 2 released games, blah, blah, blah. Okay, some studios might really be looking for that specifically, but don't get thrown off by that. Just send your CV, try it out. Who knows? They might, because in the specific position where I was in, it was like a super young studio. They didn't have, like, Belgrade and Serbia at that point didn't have a lot of game development studios at all. So there weren't people even qualified at all for this position, right? Today, it's very different. This is like 8 years later. Suddenly there's more game dev studios. You can now study at least some form of game development,
Right.
So there's going to be more people qualified. But at that point, even though I had no real experience, I still applied. I gave it a shot. So I think that's super important. Just don't fear those numbers saying 3 shipped games, 5 years of development, blah blah blah.
Just shoot your shot, man. That's how I always feel. Like, just go for it, and at the very least, you're going to learn something.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like, because in a lot of these scenarios, you're still going to have some sort of maybe interview. We will most likely get to at least some interview for a lot of these jobs, and for a lot of times they will tell you, hey, you should maybe work on this, and that's also super valuable. Like, they might come in and say, hey, we liked this and this for your test, but you should maybe look at these and these aspects. Cool, great. And in 6 months, I might reapply and try again, and I'll know what to work on in the next 6 months, which is also super valuable, because if you're working alone in a bubble, you don't know what your strengths and your weaknesses are as well. So that's always good to validate these things.
Yeah. God, that's so cool. I mean, I love that. And it's just really cool. So I wanted to ask you, because you wrote it in there. So have you tried to make something with friends before? I want you to elaborate a little bit with that.
Yeah, so I'm not saying don't do it. Like, I think working with friends is amazing. Like, I think it's super cool because you can connect. If somebody's your friend, you normally like share a similar mindset and so on, and that's all super nice. But the only problem that can arise there is like simply making games is also like a professional thing, right?
Yeah.
And there's also money involved, and there's like planning involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this can all work out, but it really needs to be like planned in ahead, right? If we're going to start doing something together, you should sit down before you even start developing the game and just make things super clear. It's like, okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to divide up the work? How are we going to organize this company-wise, blah, 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 payment-wise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So just somebody doesn't feel left out later or, end up in a problem. And the worst thing there is that you can jeopardize your friendship. And that's sort of the worst thing, because you're going to feel like you have to sacrifice friends in order to finish a game or finish a project or whatever. And I mean, this is a tale, super old tale, right? This happens all the time. It's like, oh, these two friends started a company, and then because something happened, one guy left and the other guy got pissed at the other guy, and now it's all fucked, and they no longer speak with each other. And one guy, didn't get what he wanted, blah 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 blah, and then nobody's happy, right? Even the person who ended up with more or whatever, he just feels butchered because he felt like he lost his friend. He also didn't, potentially he's not working with that person anymore, who's maybe a key part of the game. So yeah, it's a difficult thing. I'm not saying don't do it. I think working with friends is amazing. I think it's very similar with like working with family as well, right? A lot of people just go into these things blindly, like, oh yeah, it's my sister, it's my father, it's my whatever. I'll just work with them. It's gonna work out. And then again, somebody feels fucked over because it's just, oh yeah, we didn't talk it through, and this happens a lot. I mean, it happens every day, not just in games, in every possible business. So it's a lesson that I'm trying to learn, and I still have to learn even more as I grow older, both professionally, I guess.
I think you touched on something about that too, which is like having a very clear expectation before you get involved with it. I think is so important. Not only with friends, it's I think even more so important, but even just in general, starting a project and having that type of expectation. So when people come on, they can either buy into that expectation or not buy into it. And if they don't buy into it, then it's an easy, just like, okay, cool, no worries. We'll find somebody else that does fit into that type of expectation. But I think for sure, working with friends, the cool thing is like you have those, like you said, like the years of rapport and like similar interests and things like that, especially if it's a creative, a piece of like something creative that you both really enjoy and you both can, or even not both, but like, group or whatever, can really just harmonize and make something really cool. But I think it's so important to really have a vision of like, okay, what's the goal? What's the plan from here to here? And then what's going to happen after that point? And then who's going to do X, Y, and Z, and making sure that all of that stuff is divvied out. So people don't feel, especially with friends, because it can be so easy to just be like, no, it's cool, it's whatever, and just kind of brush things off. And, sometimes, friends can go either one or two ways. You're either extremely candid or you're not candid enough. And so, there's really no middle ground where compared to a professional environment, it's like you can be straight with people and be like, okay, no, you said we were going to do ABC. What happened here and here and here? And it's like there's that immediate kind of expectation between each other, because like, okay, we're both working on this and we both already bought into the goal at the end. Where with friends, it's kind of like, well, what are you doing? What are you talking to me like that? F you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yep.
So, but I mean, you're right. It can go both ways for sure. Like, if it works, it works. It's awesome. And your friendships get even stronger and better and things like that. If not, the worst thing, I mean, it sucks, but you can ruin relationships over it, because in business, it is another thing that I've also said. I'm like, this isn't just like making a piece of art that hopefully people like. It's making a piece of art plus a business, because you have to sell it at the end of the day. And hopefully that people buy it and want to play it as well. So anyway, I just wanted to touch into that a little bit, because I liked it. And I'm making a game with friends.
Yeah, I mean,
and it has its challenges.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I want to bring it up, just because most people, that's how you're going to end up doing it, right? Especially if you're, just starting out or just wanting to make your first indie game, you will probably just, find some friends who are also interested in it and, start working together. It's very rare that, especially without any budget or so on, you're just going to start reaching out to random people and like, hey, but you want to make a game together? I mean, even that works. I think the game dev community just worldwide is much larger, or it is very large, right? And you can find these people online. You can go on Reddit, you can go on Discords, you can find people to work together with. But it's always so appealing to just, hey, let's grab a few friends and work together. And it's also like when I was younger and so on, especially in high school, I tried so many times to like gather people up to work on something together. And the fact is that some people just get hyped by this, like, yeah, we're going to work together. Awesome. This is going to be super cool. And then like 2 months in, out of the group of 10 people that you had initially, like there's 3 of you now, because the rest are just sort of, I'm not super interested in that anymore. They just move on to something else, whatever. And this happens often as well. It's like people get hyped by the idea, but then when they need to contribute to it, actually, it just falls flat, right?
You're giving me horror stories, because I've had that happen so many times, man. I can't even tell you where. Like I've had projects I've worked on so many other like smaller projects. I've tried to write a show. I've tried to do a lot of things. Yeah. And so like I've had that situation where people get super hyped and jacked and like kind of help and work and build something, and then after it goes on longer than potentially they expected, it's like, well, now there's not enough time. My biggest issue too is like I will sit there and I will work on something by myself. I don't need a lot of like oversight or anything like that. I can sit there and just hammer and learn too. And it's like, if I don't know how to do something, I'll just figure it out. I'm like, I don't know. Let's just look online, see what other people have done, reach out to people, figure it out, move on, let's go forward. And then I've had people that are just like, well, I thought we were going to work on this together. I'm like, well, I already did it. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you work on your thing and I'll work on my thing. Let's just figure this out. Like we have this much stuff to do. I'm like, just start knocking things down and then we'll reconvene on what's been done. At least that's the way I envision. I don't even know if it's necessarily right, but that's been definitely one of the issues I've had.
Yeah, I definitely, like, when we started the project, I think we were much more freeform and we were just like tackling things as we went on. But then at some point, I pretty much had to jump in and like structure things. Like now we use, Jira with tasks and estimations and, like sprints and what needs to be done when, just because I think you need this, especially like in order to get, milestones in and just knowing that things are getting done and the game is progressing constantly. Because, as you know, it's so easy to just, let's, a year before release, let's work on polishing some stuff. I'm like, that is super relevant at that point. You don't need to polish. But it's so easy because those things are fun. You can sit down and work on a particle effect for like 5 hours and be like, oh, this is the coolest particle effect ever. Yeah, you don't need that now. You really don't need that now.
Yeah. So how is your guys' structure now as far as like programs and things like that? And you just mentioned sprints and all sorts of stuff. Obviously, early on, you just said like you were kind of free-forming it, and now it's like you've really structured it down. Obviously, you're getting closer to launch and demo and things like that, or demo and launch. So what does that structure look like? What do your meetings look like? How does that just overall management of the project look like right now?
So I mean, initially we like our project lives on GitLab. That's where, the repository is and all that. And GitLab had some support for like tasks and a wiki and so on, but it was very limited, and like the tools were really not super good. So at some point, because I use Jira professionally, like at all of my jobs, that's just like the industry standard for tasks and keeping a wiki and so on. I just saw, oh, look, Jira is actually free for up to 10 people. Great. I don't have a team larger than 10 people, so I could use it. And it's really good because it has a ton of like smaller tools that are just great for tracking things and so on and so forth. So we just moved all over to that, where we now have like a backlog of all the tasks, all of the bugs. We use sprints, which are pretty much like 2-week milestones. And we just, at the beginning of every 2 weeks, we just say, hey, what do we think we can complete in these next 2 weeks? And normally they get planned in a way. So it's like, it's collaborative, right? The artist is going to work on the assets that the programmer needs for the thing that he's working on. And I'm going to try to plan the work as well, so we don't have source control issues, right? Where it's like, you're going to work on something completely separate then from what the other programmer is going to be working on. So it's a lot of this, but it really helps out with then just being able to give these tasks. And then when people, sit down to work, they can just know exactly what to work on. And that's completely fine. And then we also use Confluence, which is the part of, not a part of Jira, but it is the same ecosystem, which is like the wiki, where we have design documents, things like that, blah blah blah. So there you can just find how to implement something, how it's how the system is supposed to work. And then there's like a few more smaller tools that we use. We like use Miro for brainstorming because it's like just a nice huge whiteboard where you can throw ideas, draw, copy paste images easily, et cetera, which is also super super nice. And then in terms of meetings, yeah, we pretty much talk a lot of asynchronously. Like I'd say our Discord is relatively like organized relatively well, our like work Discord. So like we try to use threads, we try to use, separate channels for, talking about art, talking about marketing, talking about this, that, blah, blah, blah. So, keeping things organized. And then every week, we have like a group meeting. This is like during the weekend. Normally it's today, like Sunday at like 1 p.m. We just sit down, whoever can join, we just jump on Discord. And it's either a moment for us to just work together, like all being there just in silence, doesn't matter. We can maybe chat a little and just work on our tasks, or a moment for us to brainstorm something, try to figure out an issue, how we're going to solve it. We had a session where we were working on the like second world or second biome. Oh, so after you finish the desert, you're going to be moving on to the city. And we had like recently, like a month or two ago, like a session where we were just sitting down and like brainstorming ideas for enemies and voting on them and who likes what, and brainstorming ideas for the boss, et cetera, et cetera. So it's, we use those meetings for those things, but that's just it. Like once a week, we have this moment. Who can join? They can join in, and that's great. And this has been working out pretty well for us.
We have a similar channel in our Discord. That's like I call it "Eat the Frog," and it's from the kind of the business world where it's like on Monday or something like that, or Saturday. I don't remember which day we do at the top of my head. I think we're moving it because now I've added filmings Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Mm-hmm. So, but basically everyone, you can get in there. You're not really talking. It's like literally this is the week to get the most important thing that you had planned to get done this week. Yeah. You get in there. You can chat if you need to, but if you're in there, you're just basically hammering out something that you were more or less tasked to get accomplished. Mm-hmm. So we have something very similar to that as well. What is your guys' marketing plan look like at the moment? Because how close are we to launching the demo roughly? If you're allowed
in
to
a week.
say.
I mean, in a week, pretty much.
Oh, wow.
And the idea was supposed to be to release it at the end of this month, but we still have some things to iron out, finish up. But that should really be in, like, we have everything ready except for one final thing, which is the tutorial for the game, which we're finishing up now. And once that's in, like, that's it. We can put it on Steam. And then, people can start playing it. And that's going to be a very important thing for us in terms of marketing, just because then, we're going to have some organic traction on our game, right? Where people can just, oh, look, it's there's this game on Steam and I can play the demo and I can try it out. And then I can tell my friends and they can also try it. And then Steam's algorithm can start pushing it to more people. Right. It's definitely, I would have loved to have this earlier. And I think that's one of the things that I would definitely change is just have that demo out much, much earlier, like 6 months at least before like release, because it is probably one of the main ways you can get wish lists is just people trying out your game and, liking it and wish listing it and then waiting for release. Unfortunately, we're doing it now, but we're still doing it, which is important. So yeah, having that demo is going to be crucial. But in terms of other marketing stuff, so we, like, let's say 4 or 5 months ago, a friend reached out to us and he was like, hey, I'm finishing a marketing university. I would love to get some more experience, blah, blah, blah. Do you think there's like an intern position in your team where I could, help out and also, be a learning experience for me? And he started working together with us. And now he's tackling pretty much TikTok, Instagram, X, the Blue Sky, whatever. He's making like 2-3 posts a week. Just all on all those platforms. And then we all contribute to that. Like we're all always like sharing ideas with what could be the next post, what could we post about. And then we have those platforms, which I'd say are secondary. And then the main thing is probably Reddit. Reddit is our best friend. Like we've had the best conversion from Reddit over to wish lists and to people actually coming into Discord, getting interested in the game and so on, just because you're giving the game out to your core audience directly, right? You're posting on r/indie games, r/indie gaming, game dev, Unity, blah, blah, blah. It's like those people really want to see that. They're very much interested in those games. And there we've had posts with like really, really successful posts with like 2,000, upvotes, where we literally, like, I think the first time we posted there, we gained like 300 wish lists, like from one post, which was really, really great. So yeah, Reddit really is the most important one. And there we don't post as often, maybe like once every 2 weeks, just so we don't also oversaturate Reddit, where it's like you just see the same, game all the time. Yeah, and there it's also super nice because we also get nice feedback, right? People write about, what they like, what they dislike, and there's a lot of stuff that people have commented on the game that we incorporated, right? That we've fixed or that we've changed, and yeah, super valuable stuff.
Yeah. What is so as you said, you had a friend that basically reached out to basically kind of hedge your marketing efforts.
Yeah.
Do you guys have planned to do any sort of paid ads? Like, what are you guys only pretty much doing organic stuff at the moment? And what does it look like as far as you get closer to release, as your marketing efforts ramp up? What does that look like? And possibly, sorry, I have a lot of follow-ups there. Oh, when is your projected plan to do Next Fest? Because sometimes it could obviously move depending on when you're releasing.
Yeah, I mean, so let's maybe start with Next Fest. The idea is definitely to do this summer Next Fest, like this one that's coming up. The idea is to do summer Next Fest, and immediately when it ends, we release the game, which is
cool.
I think that's a good marketing move as well, because you let people play your game, like a part of your game, a demo, and they like it, they want to play more, and then just when it ends, they suddenly get this pop up, hey, Apocalypse Express, it's live, you can buy it, you can play more, and I think that's awesome. I think that's a great marketing move. So for sure, this Next Fest is a big milestone going to be for us. I mean, it's pretty much the Next Fest and release at the same time. And then in terms of marketing, yeah, for now it's all organic. I've really been looking into like, maybe pay ads, maybe do this, maybe boost YouTube videos, blah blah blah. But mostly from what I read from it is that you get a lot of inorganic traction, potentially with people who are actually not even interested in your game, right? And you can potentially and like you might get views, you might get a like here and there, but how that converts into wish lists, which in the end is the most important thing, is like not too good, right? So we can maybe have, and the same thing goes with TikTok. Like TikTok, our videos aren't really, our whatever shorts aren't really amazing. Like we have like 1,000 views, which is nothing. That is literally nothing. But at the same time, here and there, we get a person who comments on the video or on the short, and that one person actually wishes the game as well. And I'd rather have that one wish list than like a hit TikTok with 1 million views where literally nobody even wish lists, or like we have like 1,000 people who wish list, and that has zero conversion to actually people purchasing the game. I think Steam is really your best friend. The amount of like how Steam does its marketing and how it pushes the game to people, that's the main thing, because that's somebody using Steam. They are a gamer. They are somebody who will purchase your game, right? And if that
we give them 30%, it better be their best friend.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. But that's the thing, and I think you should really focus. That's right. Getting the demo out early, getting a good Steam page out as well. It's just so people who are scrolling through Steam, they see it, they click it. That means that there's a good chance that they also want to buy it, right? So yeah, I think the focus on Steam needs to be the main thing. And I think for us, at least, social media is more not only getting these conversions into wish lists, but also just raising awareness about the game. People overall knowing that the game exists, even for Reddit, like even if people don't wish list, doesn't matter, right? They know it exists. It's like, there's this game, Apocalypse Express with the train and shooting guys and so on. It's pretty cool, and then they're going to maybe mention it to a friend and so on. So even this word of mouth moment is cool. So
yeah. Marketing is so frustrating because like I've told other people, I'm like, it's literally a spray and pray. Like you got to basically put as much as you can out there, because you don't know that one thing is going to take off. You know what I mean? So it's like you're just putting stuff out there until finally, hopefully, you get that one potential piece of viral content that actually converts into something meaningful. Like I forget which game or video I watched where this guy made I'm not going to remember the game, but he was telling his story of him basically going full-time indie dev and stuff like that, and how a couple of streamers, he had like no wish list, like really small, like less than 1,000 wish lists. And then a couple of streamers picked his demo up, and then he just saw literally his wish list just spike because they actually got decent views. And it's like, if he hadn't been posting on like forums and Reddits and things like that or whatever, there's a potential he never would have been seen. And it's like, you just got to be pumping stuff out there. And, you know, that's kind of like the idea of this whole show in general is like, you know, I've told people, I'm like, it's selfishly for me, but it's also like, I'm trying to also help other devs in the community as well, that there's not a lot of outlet out there for smaller indie devs or studios to just talk to somebody else and put it out there in the web and, you know, talk about their game or talk about themselves or their journey and stuff like that. Cause that's what I was looking for. I was like, I want to get on people's shows and talk about their game. I'm like, there's like one show, like one show, and he only interviews like AAA people. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how you feel about this. I'm like, the momentum feels like it's going in indie's direction and away from AAA, because I feel like a lot of people feel really bit by AAA right now.
Definitely.
And so I feel like a lot of momentum is moving into the indie realm. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think people are just, people are fed up with AAA for sure. And I think indie games are just providing a lot more in so many different ways, like primarily in terms of just creativity. Like, I think there's a lot of very creative games that, you know, show a lot of, even though there may be smaller games in scale and so on, I think they still provide a memorable experience that you're going to remember. Well, with a lot of AAA games, it's just what. But I think we're seeing with everything that's happening in the industry, you know, the layoffs and so on. I think we're also seeing some maybe positive stuff from it, where, you know, teams that got laid off and so on are now branching off into these smaller companies, which aren't really AAA, but they're not even AA. They're somewhere between that space. For me, like Embark, the guys who did like the finals, I think are a great showcase of this, because the finals it's amazing. It's like a super interesting game, like super creative. Everything that they did there, they really combined, you know,
really well made, like impressively well made,
super well made. Yeah, and that team isn't huge, right? That team really isn't huge, and I think that's a really good showcase of like, I'm not going to call it indie because it's not indie, right? They have a big publisher as well behind them and all that. But at the same time, I think we're going to see more of that. You know, people just dropping out of AAA, creating their own studios and making some super creative stuff. And I think that's going to be very healthy for the market as well. Just, you know, having just a lot of options, you know, smaller scale indie games, these, you know, middle, AA, whatever you want to call them. And then the AAA games that are, there's still mass appeal for them, right? But I think it's just people also evolve through their life as, like, you know, gamers, whatever. You know, when I was younger, I used to really play a lot of AAA games, but then you experience them all, right? And then like, I love talking about Assassin's Creed because of it, because it's like, if you take a person who doesn't play games and you give them the latest Assassin's Creed, they're going to fall in love. That is going to be one of the best games they've ever played, right? But then for somebody who played like 5 Assassin's Creeds, you give them the latest one and they're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. This is the exact same thing I've been playing for 10 years, you know?
You might hate me after this, but I was so pumped up to play the first Assassin's Creed. I saw those original images. I was like, dude, you're an assassin in Jerusalem. I'm like, this is wild. I was like, this is such a cool game. I was so jacked. And then they killed me, because then I bought the collector's edition. I bought the whole thing. I was like so jacked for it, because my favorite game of all time is Metal Gear Solid. And so like, I was like, oh my God, I gotta sneak around and just stab people. I'm like, this is phenomenal. But then the story killed me for like, you might not like this, but like when I found out you were some bartender from New York that traveled back in time through their blood to then go to Jerusalem, I was like, why can't I just be an assassin in Jerusalem? Why do I need this ridiculous storyline that I'm going back in time? And then I think because I was playing the game and where it totally took me out, I'm like, I can get past it. Because then you going back in time in the beginning of the game. I'm like, okay, maybe I can get past this. We'll just play the game. Maybe you're just like this. And then they're like, all right, let's take you out of it. And then they take you out. I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this. I'm like, you're taking the immersion completely out of my world. And so I've never been able to go back, and I've never forgiven them for it.
I mean, I think that's completely legit. Like for me, and I think for a lot of people, like the main thing is you're going for the history there. You're going to be that assassin within that world and so on. And I feel like most people don't really enjoy that modern world story aspect of it. It's like, I don't give a shit. Like, I don't care about Desmond. I mean, fine, Desmond, whenever he's the protagonist of the first games, but I just care about the assassin guy who was just in the game. That's what's fun, you know?
Yeah. Like seeing, like, that was what, I mean, Ubisoft does a great job at like making like photorealistic, like actual like world, or like a what's the like taking real life and making it into the game. Like they've always done it. I'll give them massive credit for that. Ubisoft has always done a great job at doing that. And so I was like, sweet, Jerusalem. Like, you know, I remember seeing the old original like CG, it's like CG of like how many polygons they used for, you know, the world or stuff like that. I'm like, dude, this game looks legit. Like, I'm so pumped up for that. And I'm like, why did they bait? Because they didn't have any marketing about that whole thing in the beginning. They tried to keep it such a secret. No one knew. And so I'm sitting here going, yo, I'm this freaking badass assassin in Jerusalem. I mean, this is freaking rad. Like, this is awesome. In the Crusades, I was like, dude, this is totally up my alley. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like the bait and switch, I was like, unforgivable.
I mean, I sort of understand what they wanted to do there. They maybe wanted to have like some social commentary where it's like, you know, oh, you know, these Templars and these like hidden orders and blah, blah, blah. And, like, they still exist in the modern world, you know, and it's, you know, these things, even though that happened like thousands of years ago, it doesn't matter. You know, it's still something that's real. But I think it could have done it in a much more interesting way. Like, I think that every time you have to do that in like present day sequences, you're like, oh my god, let me just end this and let me continue playing as the cool assassin.
Yeah, they could have. I mean, you could have. I mean, obviously we've gone way off on a tangent, but they could have easily just been like, you know, the order and then them telling a story and then you just jump into the story type of thing. Yeah. There you go. Now you just play the game as the assassin, retelling a story or something. But anyway, I digress. Like we went off on a tangent. Now I'm lost. But this is what's fun about this show, and that's what I was telling you about. Like, it's just, I mean, you have years and years of experience of playing games and making games, and it's likewise not so much making games. This is our first game that we're making, but I have been in the gaming world for so long and have I have a lot of opinions, some not so great. But I like what you said earlier about as far as the bigger studios with all the layoffs and how it's kind of, all these devs are kind of trickling out into these smaller studios. I'm a huge, like, just generally decentralized type of person. So like one of the things we noticed as in like 2005 to 2008 is just the cannibalization of these smaller studios. All these big studios, EA, you know, even Ubisoft, but EA, Activision, Ubisoft, all these big names started cannibalizing all these little studios. And I think it got to a point to where we are now, where all those little studios are just in the monolith of these big AAAs, and they're realizing it's not sustainable. And now they're just having to kind of unload them back into the world. And so now we've gone cannibalization, and now everyone's coming back down, and it's going to have these smaller studios pop up again. And then we'll probably go through this cycle over and over and over again. But I like more of that decentralized vision of just the world in general, but just in the sense of like gaming, like more people be more independent, making your thing, because you're really going to care about it.
I absolutely agree. And I think just at the time, like those years that you mentioned, there weren't also as many publishers as well to help out these smaller devs, and even putting publishers completely out of the equation as well. Like, I think today you can succeed completely without a publisher as well, right? If you have a really good product and so on. Again, and a little bit of luck, of course. Like Steam can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So yeah. I think that's crucial.
Even Unreal, I give Unreal a little bit of credit too. I mean, they have their marketplace, and you can make a game through Unreal, and you can publish it through Unreal. I mean, I love the Unreal Engine. I've been a fanboy of Unreal since Unreal, the game.
Yeah.
And so like I love. Obviously now it's kind of tumultuous. Like, you know, people love and hate it because of Fortnite and whatever.
Yeah, I have a mixed relationship with it as well. Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's very mixed, and people have a lot of strong opinions about their marketplace. I'm like, well, Steam does the same thing. Obviously, they have some stuff that people really don't like, but I'm like, I don't know. I like this leveling of the playing field, or the entry for people or devs to try and be able to make things. And I think Unreal does. Their engine's phenomenal on being able to get people to actually make something. And same thing with Unity. So.
Yeah, I like, for me, the biggest problem with what's happening with Unreal now is that I have a little bit of a fear that we're gonna lose other engines. Like, I was super happy when Godot came into the play space and just suddenly started, fighting as well, because I'm sad that like a lot of AAA studios are ditching their engines now. They're gonna throw that all out the window and just switch to Unreal. And that's sort of sad to see, because there's a lot of like tech and love and energy being put into these engines over like a huge span of time, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, but Unreal is great. Let's just move to Unreal. And I think Unreal has a ton of amazing tools and a ton of cool things, and I think it's great for also indie devs and so on. But at the same time, I think a lot of indie devs are also making the mistake of, oh, I'll grab a reel and I can make a cool realistic game, and I'm an indie dev. I'm like, that's the worst mistake, and that's how we're ending with a lot of games being released that just, if you're gonna do realistic graphics, you can't just get some assets or make a few assets or whatever. Like, there's so much you need to invest in animations and effects and this and that for that to look, because if you don't, you're going to end up with a super uncanny looking game and like inconsistent in terms of art style, all of that stuff, right? Because you just don't have the budget, you don't have the people. I mean, there's a reason that Call of Duty is developed by like 1,000 people team, more and even more, right? Because
two teams, right? It's a Switch is every other year it goes from
Treyarch and
it goes from one to the other.
Treyarch and Infinity Ward, it's like, and it's not just that team. It's like more, supporting teams and all of that, and like outsourcers and blah 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 blah. Like, and they got an amazing looking game. Like, presentation wise, those games look really really good. But they do that because they can't, because they have a huge team. And then you have these smaller devs who are like, yeah, there's 10 of us and we're going to do a hyper realistic game in Unreal. Don't do it. Don't do it. You will not, your game will not look good. You will and that's the problem, because Unreal presents itself as, you can do this very easily, just to use nanite this and that and this cool new tech that we have. And the game ends up being extremely unoptimized, and it doesn't look as good as it could, because you just don't have the resources to do it, right? You might have really cool tech and then shit animations, and that doesn't fit in. It just won't look good, because you have your eyes and your brain have an expectation when they see this beautiful paysage and landscape and all that, and like beautiful trees with like cool tech and like wind, whatever. And then like the animation just looks completely unrealistic, and you're like, well, it's putting me completely out of it. I would love for, like, with DICE, for example, in their Frostbite engine, it has a lot of cool tech behind it, right? And there's a chance that they're going to just ditch it completely and move to Unreal as well.
I didn't know that.
Because they were struggling, and with Battlefield 2042, they had issues with it. They didn't update it enough. And of course, it's expensive for these studios as well to keep that engine running. That means you need huge engine teams constantly developing them, updating them, adding new features. But, if you're EA, if you're Ubisoft and so on, just, do that, because it gives your games flavor as well. It allows you to create tools and so on that are suited specifically for you, for your games, right? And that's why I also like Godot, because it's open source, right? People can develop things together on it and just expand its functionality, and other people can use that functionality, which is awesome.
It feels like Godot feels like the Linux of like the operating system world to me.
Yeah. I mean, like, it is, right? It is, and I'm really glad that it's finding its place in the market, right? And it's now this trinity of, like, Unreal, Unity, Godot. I'm glad that Game Maker as well still has like a place as well. Like, I think for game developers who are starting out, like my first game, Biceps Clicker, that was in Game Maker, and that was probably the easiest way for me to get a grasp on programming and built in art stuff within Game Maker and so on. It's really cool, because as somebody who doesn't know anything, it's like, oh yeah, I'll just grab that and I'll try and make a game, and I think that's good. That I'm glad that Game Maker is also still succeeding to stay afloat. So yeah.
There was that indie game that made their own engine, Noisha, something like that.
Noita, the one with the simulated physics on all the
every
pixels.
Every single pixel is animated or simulated, and then there was no engine that could do it, so they had to make their own engine to make that game. I thought that was insanely impressive, obviously.
But that's the thing. I think that's also like a trap that indie devs fall into. They're like, I'm gonna make my own engine, and people do that for the wrong reasons as well. They do that like, oh yeah, it's almost like for bragging rights, or I don't even know why. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make my own engine. It's like, if you want to do that, you have to have a clear idea. Like, try first, have an idea, realize I want to do this game. And I'm guessing with Noita, I don't know what happened there exactly, but right, they probably started working on it, on the idea. They were like, well, Unreal doesn't work for us, Unity doesn't work for us, no engine works for us.